Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you all had a great Thanksgiving. I know I did. The scale says so, and I feel like I'm still bloated, so I thought we could be a little comfier today. I hope you guys got good Black Friday deals and Cyber Monday. I got a new camera, and I'm excited because I get to bring you guys better content. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jennifer, and we talk about scary, spooky, quirky, and sometimes tragic history. So if you're into that, grab a drink and grab a snack, because today we're going to be traveling back to Chicago in the 1890s. So this is going to be the first serial killer that I cover on this channel, and he's also known as America's First. So I thought it was only fitting. He built a castle, well, they called it a castle, but a hotel that was specifically designed for murder, torture, and deception. And today we're going to talk about his backstory, why he was the way he was, and the chilling things that happened behind those walls. Can you guess who it is? Yep, we're talking about H.H. Holmes. So he was actually born as Herman Webster Muggett on May 16th, 1861 in Gilmanton, New Hampshire. And this was like a seemingly rural, quiet neighborhood. His parents were descended from the first English settlers in the area, and their names were Levi Horton Muggett and Theodate Page Price. And they were like extremely religious Methodists. He did have siblings, and he was the third child. I think before marriage, his mother was a school teacher, but people remember her to be very cold and distant. His father worked as a farmer and a trader, which often required like long hours and a no-nonsense attitude. And he was known that he was like a raging alcoholic that was abusive, both mentally and physically, to his children. And they do believe his mom was possibly abusive as well, but like mentally, you know, she was very distant and didn't provide like that motherly love to her kids. They would use some harsh tactics like isolating the kids or starving them. Apparently, some reports say the dad would use like kerosene-soaked rags to cover the children's mouth for them to keep quiet. So you get the picture. They were terrible parents. And growing up, he would often find like solace in a nearby forest. This is where he began dissecting animals. First, it would start off with small things like frogs, and then he moved on to rabbits and such. And this sparked his fascination for dead things. It was said that H.H. Holmes actually excelled in school, so he was a smart kid. But because of all the abuse, I assume, at home, he was not the most popular. He was kind of weird. So it was hard for him to build meaningful relationships, and he was often bullied at school. These are always the worst stories, because it's like, could it have been avoidable if he did have friends and had like outside influences that were positive? I don't know. So like being bullied, constantly bullied at school, there's this one instance where the bullies took him to a nearby, I guess it was like a doctor's office or a hospital, and they tried to scare him with a skeleton. I think they put the hands over his face, but instead of being scared, he recollects that this was the moment that ignited his interest in the human anatomy. So he was bullied, he didn't have kids, and he was dissecting things in the forest, so he was strange. And a lot of people believe that his first murder was actually at the age of 11, when him and his friend Tom were playing outside and Tom accidentally fell off of a cliff. That was never confirmed, but it's strongly believed that that was his first encounter with murder. So in his teen years, he actually gets married to a girl named Clara Levering, but this didn't last long. He left her after a year, used her money to fund his schooling. I mean, douche move, but keep that in mind because it gets worse. As a young man, Holmes attends medical school at the University of Michigan, and this is where he has the opportunity to experiment with cadavers. So he was a studious person, but he wasn't the best. Like, he quickly got involved in fraudulent schemes, such as grave robbing. We actually talked about this in my first video, so that's interesting. And he used these bodies to swindle insurance companies. He would disfigure the bodies from the medical lab to make it appear that accidental deaths had occurred, and then collect money from the insurance companies. And the rest of the unused ones, he would either sell them to the medical school or sell them on the black market. Despite all of this and his side hustle and schemes that was going on, he does manage to graduate in 1884 with his MD. And he does go through a few aliases, but this is the moment that he rebrands himself as Henry Howard Holmes, the man that history would remember forever. He goes on and he's still this big con man. He opens up a few bogus medical practices. At one time, he advertises a fake cure for alcoholism and other ailments. And patients believed him. They would come travel to see him, pay him a ton of money for these things that never worked. He also ran real estate scams and like other small scale cons. And I'm sure by now you're wondering what I was wondering, like how did he manage to get away with all of this, being the weird kid that he was growing up? Well, according to history, not me, he was considered to be very handsome. I'll enter a picture right here. Like at one point he had 3 wives. None of them knew, 3 wives at the same time. None of them knew of each other. Total player. He juggled multiple affairs and he just had this charm and confidence that made people trust him. So it was easy for him to manipulate the people around him. So now the year is 1886 and Holmes moves to Chicago. And the city was booming at the time thanks to the World's Columbian Exposition of 1893. Now this was a fair and it would showcase like groundbreaking innovations at the time. So we're talking the Ferris wheel, the dishwasher, and fluorescent lighting. It was a huge fair. I believe that the event at one point, I think within like the first 6 months of being open, it drew in an astounding 26 million people. And at the time, Holmes was working at probably one of his bogus practices as a pharmacist. And he would see the fair as a playground. I mean, he was a kid in a candy shop. He purchases a vacant lot in Englewood, Chicago, and he begins constructing what would later be known as the Murder Castle. Officially, it was called the World's Fair Hotel, and it was a 3-story structure that was supposed to house guests for the World's Fair, hence the name World's Fair Hotel. He was creative with all the schemes, but he couldn't come up with a better name. I don't know. The building was a maze of over 100 rooms, but obviously it was no ordinary hotel. The ground floors were accessible to the public and housed shops ran by local merchants. The second floor was particularly perplexing, featuring over 50 doors, 6 hallways, and just 35 functional bedrooms. The remaining spaces were soundproofed. Many rooms were tiny with low ceilings, and some were even equipped with gas lines that Holmes used to suffocate occupants. Additionally, the floor included peepholes. I believe that some of the paintings included them as well. Alarms to detect escape attempts, hidden trapdoors, secret passageways, and a chute leading directly to the basement, which was for easy body disposal. And the third floor was fully furnished, but it was very confusing to guests because the rooms were arranged in bizarre angles with poor lighting and scattered gas lamps. It had dead ends, staircases that would lead to nowhere, which I feel like that would really mess with me because I mean, imagine walking up a staircase and coming to a dead end. I feel like the human brain can't comprehend that. It's like the TikTok back rooms. So here are just a few accounts of what happened within the walls. So one of Holmes's earliest victims was Julia Smythe. So she had worked for him in the pharmacy. She was married to Dr. Lawrence Connor, and they had a young daughter named Pearl. Just like everyone else, she thought that Holmes was very charming and handsome, and they began having an affair. Dr. Connor finds out about this affair and leaves her and their daughter Pearl. And now Julia is a single mother with a daughter to take care of, and Holmes takes advantage of this opportunity and offers her lodging in the Murder Castle. Obviously, that wasn't the best decision because on Christmas Eve of 1891, Julia and her daughter Pearl mysteriously disappear. So when asked about this, Holmes at first said, oh, she left to go visit her her dying sister. And then he changes the story. Oh, she left and fled back to her ex-husband. Ultimately, he claimed that she died due to an abortion, and he was like a pharmacist. He wasn't known for performing abortions, but this is what he went with, and they believed him. But it is believed that Holmes experimented on their bodies in the basement before disposing of them. And their bodies were never found, but Dr. Connor, the husband, he does go on to be a key witness during Holmes's trial. Another victim of Holmes was Emmeline Sigran. She was a young and smart woman who came to Chicago to actually work for him in his hotel. Emmeline was described to be intelligent and attractive, and her qualities seemed to draw Holmes in. Now, Holmes is like smitten with her, and he is trying to be like her little sugar daddy because he promises her a bright future and tries to charm her in that way. And people remember Holmes trying to court her, but I guess it didn't work because she lost interest within a week. She was like, boy, bye. And obviously, I don't think he was too happy about that because she does mysteriously go missing only a few months into her employment. And tragically, her remains were discovered weeks later in a state beyond recognition. And for this one, it's believed that Holmes used one of those gas-sealed rooms to suffocate her before disposing of her body through dissection. And perhaps one of the most infamous murders of his is that of Minnie and Nanny Williams, who were two sisters that fell victim to his web of lies and conning. So Holmes courted Minnie and they lived together as husband and wife. He promised her a bright future and she was just intoxicated by his charming ways. At one point, I think he even convinced her to sign over her property in Texas to him. And she genuinely thought that she found a great man. Holmes met Nanny at the station and led her to the hotel, where he proceeded to take all of her money. So he robs her and then he pushes her into one of the airtight vaults where she suffocates to death. And this is before Nanny and Minnie could even reunite. They never even saw each other. Fast forward, Minnie dies too. He claims that he chloroformed her while she was sleeping and then dumped her lifeless body into one of the cellars. He tried to spin a ton of lies around their deaths, but he later admits to it. And after his arrest, they do find bones in the basement, which they believed belonged to Minnie and Nanny. And their deaths are the ones that really sparked the police into investigating Holmes. And also they started to get suspicious of all the fraud that was happening and the disappearances around Holmes. So as his crimes started to pile up, Holmes flees Chicago after the whole World's Fair. He doesn't stop there. He continues all of his schemes on the other side of the country in Philadelphia, where he meets a man named Benjamin Pitezel. Him and Benjamin, they become friends, I guess, and they come up with this elaborate scheme to collect money from a life insurance company. And the plan is for them to fake Benjamin's death and collect $10,000 from the insurance company. It was actually Fidelity Mutual of Philadelphia, so that was interesting. So the plan after they faked his death was that Holmes would just present them with a cadaver that was, beyond recognition, and they get paid out. However, Holmes actually does kill him and collects the money. And then somehow he goes on to convincing Pitezel's wife and 3 kids to come live with him. As they're traveling from city to city, he is secretly killing off all of her 3 children. And he emotionally torments Carrie, the mother, whole time. That has to be one of the saddest stories. Like you murder the man and then go after his family afterwards. No, you murder the man, collect money on his name, and then go on to murder his family. It's terrible. With the cops on his tail, Holmes is arrested in November 17th, 1894 in Boston, Massachusetts. He confesses to a ton of murders, 27 officially, although a lot of people believe that number is closer to 200. During his trial, he famously says, "I was born with the devil inside me," suggesting that his murderous tendencies were always just a part of him. In 1896, he was hanged for his crimes. The murder castle was eventually set on fire by some arsonists. People think they did that in order to avoid people coming to visit it as an attraction. And today, only a post office stands in its place. Holmes' story is a a chilling reminder of how evil can hide behind a charming facade. While the physical building is gone, the terror that took place within its walls is a part of dark history that we'll never forget. Well, that's it. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into the life of H.H. Holmes and his crimes. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys know this story because it was in American Horror Story, I think season 5, the hotel one, and his character was played by Evan Peters. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. And if you guys like this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. And until next time, bye guys.